I never intended to hide my success. Life simply arranged itself that way. I grew up in Singapore, raised by parents who believed education was the only inheritance worth leaving behind. My father drove a taxi through long, sleepless nights, his hands permanently rough from the wheel. "Emily," he'd say, glancing at me in the rearview mirror, "knowledge is the one thing no one can ever steal from you." My mother worked 2 jobs, rarely resting, always reminding me that sacrifice was temporary, but opportunity could last a lifetime. Their faith wasn't misplaced. I graduated top of my class in finance and joined one of Asia's largest banks. By 28, I became the youngest division head in its history, overseeing more than $50 billion in corporate loans. Boardrooms knew my name, headlines followed, but outside that world, almost no one did. I liked it that way. That's why I spent my weekends at my friend's tiny cafe, helping behind the counter, grounding myself in simplicity. That's where I met James. He walked in one rainy morning, ordered a latte, and laughed when I drew a small heart in the foam. "This might be the best coffee I've had in months," he said, smiling like it surprised him. "The secret is care," I replied, wiping the counter. He came back the next weekend, then the one after that. Soon, we were talking about everything: his work as an architect, his dream of designing sustainable buildings, his close-knit family. He saw me, not my resume, not my net worth. When he asked me out, I said yes without thinking twice. Our first date was at a hawker center, sharing greasy plates of char kway teow and laughing over nothing at all. I fell for his kindness, his integrity, the way he treated everyone, cleaners, servers, strangers, with equal respect. Before introducing me to his family, he hesitated. "They're traditional," he warned. "Status matters to them." "I can handle it," I said confidently. I hadn't met Richard Chin yet. James's father was a self-made real estate tycoon who filled every room with his voice. His wife, Helen, sat beside him draped in designer silk and quiet superiority, and James's sister, Victoria, looked at me the way one inspects an inconvenience. When I mentioned working at a cafe, the mood shifted. "A cafe?" Richard echoed loudly. "James, you said she went to university." "She did," James started. "Emily has a degree in..." "Clearly wasted," Richard interrupted. "In this family, we build empires. We don't serve coffee." Helen touched her pearls. "Perhaps we can help her find something more suitable. The cleaning company we use is hiring." Victoria laughed. "At least she'll have benefits." I smiled politely. Years of negotiating billion-dollar deals keeping my expression calm. "I'm quite content, but thank you." Dinner dragged on, each remark sharper than the last. James apologized the entire drive home. "They'll change," he promised. They didn't. Over the next year, their disdain only deepened. Family gatherings became trials. Richard mocked my work openly. Helen excluded me with surgical precision. Victoria suggested, loudly, that James could still do better. When James proposed, their answer was immediate. "A cafe worker?" Richard shouted. "Have you lost your mind?" "I love her," James said firmly. "Then don't expect my support." James chose me anyway. We married quietly, beautifully, without them. I continued my weekend cafe shifts, while spending weekdays closing billion-dollar deals. James never pushed me to explain. He loved me without conditions, and that was everything. Then came the Chin family reunion. "We should go," James said gently. "They're still my family." I agreed. I shouldn't have. The reunion was held at Richard's estate, an ocean of marble, wealth, and arrogance. The whispers began the moment we arrived. "Oh, she's still pouring coffee for a living?" Victoria announced loudly. "How dedicated." Richard raised a glass, boasting about the family's success. Then he saw us. "James, tell everyone about your new project," he said, eyes sliding past me. "Your wife can serve drinks. She's good at that." Laughter followed. Before James could respond, chaos erupted. Richard's secretary rushed in, pale. "Sir, the emergency loans, they've been denied." Richard froze. "That's impossible. I spoke to the division head yesterday. The new CEO is reviewing everything personally," she said. "They want a meeting tomorrow." My phone vibrated. I stepped aside to answer. The audit confirms it. My secretary whispered. Chin Developments has been misrepresenting assets for years. Send me everything, I said calmly. When I returned, Richard was unraveling. Helen hovered anxiously. Victoria approached me with false concern. Trouble in paradise? She sneered. Not that you'd understand business. I smiled. How's your role at the company? She straightened. Executive VP. Handling the offshore accounts too? I asked softly. Her glass shattered on the floor. Richard abruptly dismissed the guests. As they left, he grabbed James. I need connections, he snapped. Help me. James shook his head. We don't have that kind of reach. Richard turned on me. This is your fault. You've brought nothing but bad luck. I stepped forward. Mr. Chin, I said evenly, holding up my phone. Our meeting is tomorrow at 9. He scoffed. This doesn't concern you. It does, I replied, turning the screen toward him. The silence was absolute. Emily Chen, I said calmly, CEO, Corporate Banking Division, Singapore United Bank. His face drained of color. Helen dropped her pearls. Victoria couldn't breathe. You're lying, Richard whispered. Your loans crossed my desk last week, I continued. The irregularities were disappointing. James stared at me. Emily, all this time? I wanted to be loved as myself, I said softly. You gave me that. Richard recovered quickly, forcing a smile. Well then, family helps family, yes? I met his gaze, unflinching. We'll see, I said. I echoed. Like when you called me a gold digger at our wedding reception. Or when you told your business associates that James married beneath his station. Helen stepped forward, arms outstretched. Darling, we were just protecting our son. Surely you understand. I understand perfectly. You judged me, humiliated me, and treated me like dirt because you thought I was beneath you. Now you want my help. Victoria attempted damage control. Emily, sweetie, we were just teasing. It was all in good fun. I turned to James. Did you know about your sister's role in the company? He shook his head. She said she was handling operations. She's been helping your father hide debt and inflate assets. The audit shows years of financial manipulation. Richard's face turned purple. Now see here. You can't just. I can. And I will. I interrupted. Tomorrow's meeting isn't about loans. It's about a fraud investigation. The color drained from his face. You wouldn't dare. We're family. Family? I laughed softly. Let me share some wisdom from my father, the taxi driver you mocked at my wedding. He taught me that true family supports you, believes in you, and loves you regardless of your status. You've done none of those things. I took James's hand. The authorities will be contacting you tomorrow. I suggest you get your lawyers ready. As we turned to leave, Helen called out desperately. Wait, what about Victoria? She was just following orders. I paused at the door. Actions have consequences, Helen. Victoria chose to participate in fraud. She'll face the same investigation as everyone else. The drive home was silent. Finally, James spoke. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have treated me differently if you knew? He thought for a moment. No, I fell in love with you, not your job. That's why I fell in love with you too. I squeezed his hand. I'm sorry for keeping this from you. I just needed to know our love was real. What happens now? I sighed. Your father's company will be investigated. With the evidence we have, there will likely be criminal charges. Victoria too, if she's implicated. And us? That depends. Can you handle being married to a woman who makes more than your entire family combined? James laughed, the tension breaking. I think I can manage, but no more secrets. No more secrets, I promised. The next morning, the Chin family empire began to crumble. Richard arrived at my office precisely at 9 a.m. Flanked by his lawyers. Gone was the arrogant tycoon. In his place sat a man who finally realized he wasn't the most powerful person in the room. The audit revealed systematic fraud spanning 5 years, I said, sliding the report across my desk. Falsified valuations, hidden debts, shell companies, it's all here. We can explain, his lawyer began. No need. The evidence has been forwarded to the authorities. Richard leaned forward. Emily, please think about what this will do to the family name. A name? I replied. Like you thought about my reputation when you told everyone I was a gold digger? Before he could respond, my secretary interrupted. Ma'am, the police are here. What followed was a media circus. Chen Development CEO arrested for fraud splashed across headlines. Victoria was taken into custody next. Her designer handbag clutched to her chest as officers led her away. Helen had a very public breakdown at the country club. James stood by me through it all, though I knew it pained him to see his family fall apart. They did this to themselves, he said one evening as we watched the news coverage. You just exposed the truth. Weeks turned into months. The investigation uncovered more than even I had suspected. Richard had been running a complex scheme using inflated property valuations to secure loans, then channeling the money through shell companies. Victoria had helped coordinate the fraud, her executive position nothing more than a front. The trial was swift. Richard and Victoria were both sentenced to prison, 8 years for him, 5 for her. Helen was spared criminal charges but lost everything in the asset forfeitures. One day, as autumn painted Singapore's gardens in golden hues, Helen appeared at my office. I know I have no right to be here, she began, her designer clothes replaced by simple cotton, but I need to say something. I gestured for her to continue. I was wrong about you, so terribly wrong. Tears filled her eyes. We judged you because we thought wealth and status were everything. Now I'm alone, living in a small apartment, working as a sales clerk, and I finally understand. Understand what? That character matters more than cash. You were kind to us even when we were cruel. You could have destroyed us completely, but you let the law take its course. That's real class. I studied her face, seeing genuine remorse for the first time. What do you want, Helen? A chance not to be closed off. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to apologize to you and James and try to be better. 6 months later, we hosted a small dinner party. Helen came, bringing homemade dumplings, a skill she'd learned in her new life. She was different now, humbler, more genuine. James was healing too, visiting his father and sister in prison, working through years of family dysfunction. As for me, I kept my weekend shifts at the cafe, not because I needed to hide anymore, but because I loved the simplicity of making someone's day better with a perfect cup of coffee. One morning, a young woman came in looking defeated. Rough day? I asked, drawing a heart in her latte foam. My boyfriend's parents think I'm not good enough, she sighed. Wrong background, wrong job. I smiled, remembering where my own journey began. Let me tell you a story about family, pride, and what really matters in the end. Life has a way of teaching us its most important lessons. Sometimes it takes losing everything to understand what truly matters. Richard and Victoria learned this in prison. Helen learned it through humility. And I learned that being true to yourself is worth more than all the wealth in the world. James and I are expecting our first child now. We decided to name her Grace, a reminder that sometimes the hardest situations deserve a measure of mercy. Helen is excited to be a grandmother, and even Richard, through his prison letters, seems to be reflecting on what kind of legacy he really wants to leave. The cafe still stands, a humble reminder of where our story began. Sometimes customers recognize me, the banking CEO who serves coffee on weekends. They often ask why I still do it. My answer is simple. Every cup of coffee is a chance to make someone's day better, and at the end of our lives, isn't that what matters most? They usually smile, understanding or not, but I know my truth. Success isn't about power, or revenge, or even proving others wrong. It's about staying true to yourself, showing kindness even when it's not deserved, and remembering that everyone, even those who hurt us, deserves a chance at redemption. As I write this, I'm sitting in the cafe, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of hope. James will join me soon, as he does every weekend. Helen might stop by with her dumplings. Life isn't perfect, but it's real and rich with lessons learned. And sometimes, when I'm making coffee or reviewing billion-dollar deals, I think about my father's words. Knowledge is the one thing nobody can take from you. He was right, but he missed something important. Integrity, compassion, and the courage to be yourself, those are things nobody can take either.